Hello guys and welcome to a new tutorial. In this tutorial we are going to build this small application which is bringing for us a real data prices for cryptos. So as you see here we are getting updated prices every 5 seconds. So the application will be built with React Native for the front end, and in the back end we are going to use NodeJs, and the communication channel will be a socket.io. So I am using a back end because we need sometimes to secure our APIs. For that, you can of course create directly a socket in your application without depending on some backend, but is more efficient way to build a backend and a front end. So for that, as you see, the prices are getting updated every 5 seconds and they are coming from real data source, as we will see in this video. So of course you can have, if you have any question, you can comment on this video. As well, you will see the source code of the project, the front end and the back end in the description of this video. I hope you will enjoy this tutorial and of course see you in another tutorials as well. So are you ready? Let's get started. Okay, now so let's start with the backend part. In the backend part, I need to create a web server. So for that, let's start with npm init. So I need to initialize my application somehow and give it a name. So for example, I will say that the name of this application will be crypto WebSocket, for example. And now it will give us version, description, entry point. Nobody like we need to care about all of this. We just say okay for all of that, and it will create for us a package JSON. In this package JSON, we will have all the basic information which we have entered before. So I need to install 3 libraries which I need to work with during creating the WebSocket application. First library is Express. Of course, we need that for creating the web server. So I will put npm install Express. And also we need another library which will be socket.io. Of course, some people prefer like to use WebSocket, but I need to use also as well the socket.io, which provide a lot of great functionality, so we can use that as well. So I will put here socket.io. And also we need like how to say a request to create request from HTTPS to get the current prices of crypto. So how we can do that? We install library which is called HTTPS. So of course after that we are going to install all of those libraries and they will be added to the package JSON. So for that I said here that the main will be index.js. So we can put as well here index.js as index Java file, which will be for example the JavaScript file, which will be for example the entry point for our application, and we can start it. So here as you see we have scripts, and in those scripts we can have a start script. So this start script will serve my application. So the starting script will be for example node. So the starting script will be like node, and then we give the name of the file index.js. So for that I will run the application with node. So let's try that now, and we will say here npm run start. So for that it will run the application. Okay, node index.js, but it's empty. I don't have anything here and I need to check if it's really working. So let's try that now and see if that working for me. Okay, I got in the console log here these values. Also I installed like extension which is called Prettier. Like it's nice to have here, like you can format your code and you can add the configuration for it. The configuration I copied it from somewhere, so you can just grab them from here. I have tab width 2 and also print width will be 80, and semicolon at the end is like obligatory, and also arrow parents. Also we can have like some arrow functions, and also a trailing comma at the end of every object or of every array, and single quotes for the strings. So now if I save, I will see that the changes are applied and I have for example the single quotes. So now let's create our server. First of all, I will say here so const express, and with const express I will say require, and I will call the express which I have installed already. And also when we want to call a server, we can have like this const server, and this server will have express, like we can assign that server to server constant, and we open or we call the express and we say listen here, and then we put a port. For that I will define a constant for the port, which will be like, for example, 3000. So I will put here constant, call it port, and this port will have like 3000 or 4000, it's up to you. So now we have this port and we will pass it to the listen method, and with the listen method it will have for me a callback when the connection or when the server get created successfully. So for that I will have here, for example, console.log, and I will say for example listening to, for example, we put then the port. So for that we can use the backticks, so we can bind directly the variable there. So I will put here like directly the port. So now let's try to run the server again, and we will see like npm run start. Okay, listening to 3000. So our server now is running. So the second step which we need to do is creating a WebSocket. If you remember, we have installed library which is called socket.io. So I will put here const, and then I will have here socket.io, and then the socket.io, it will also require the socket.io library which we have installed, as you see here. So creating a WebSocket needs to pass that server which we have created to that socket. So to do that, we can define as well a constant, and this constant will be the instance of that WebSocket where we are going to send messages and receive messages from the client. So for that, I will use the socket.io class or the constant which I have created, and I will pass the server which is created here, and it's returned like as express. So for that, we are ready with the WebSocket. So now we are going to create a connection or see if a client got connected. So I will put here io dot, and then there is a method inside this which says on, and then in on it has like a lot of events, and those events are fired whenever something happens. So for example, on connection is going to be fired when some client is connected, and then you can use that, for example, to have like some also another message like the user got disconnected. So we can have here a socket as a callback. So we can define any variable, of course, here, and then you can have in the callback, for example, console log, like we have like the message which says that okay, a client connected. And also inside that connection, like we can observe if a client disconnected. So we can say the callback itself, and we put like on as well. Of course, you can use also the IO, like you can have on, and also for the IO also you can use it after the connection. But after guarantee that you are connected to the client, you can do whatever you want here. So I will have here like another event which is called disconnect, and this disconnect will be fired when there is like disconnection from the client. So I will say here in the console log like a client disconnected like this. So for that we have to try our server. I am going to stop it, like I will press here Ctrl C, and then I will run it again. So now, okay, we are listening to 3000, and I didn't see here a client connected or client disconnected in the console because I am not connecting with any client to the WebSocket. So as a client, you can use for test Postman. Postman is a great tool, and recently they added the feature of connecting to WebSockets through the Postman. So you just need to run Postman and install it to your device from their website. And then here in the corner you say new, and then you have WebSocket request, and it's now beta, so you can also try and give some feedback if there is some problems you have to them or to Postman team. So for that I will use the HTTP, and in the HTTP localhost exactly the address of the server which we have created, and the port is 3000, and then you click on connect. Okay, now we have an issue, like we didn't we weren't able to connect because I am making a mistake here by using HTTP. Of course, the WebSocket is not using the HTTP protocol, it's using the WebSocket protocol. So let me zoom this a little bit to make it bigger so you can see what I mean. So as you see here, we have like this WebSocket. And now this WebSocket is using HTTP, which is wrong. So for that, you need to remove this part. You have to remove the HTTP request. Otherwise, it will not work for you. So after that, we are going to connect. So I will say here, connect. And then we are saying again, or we getting again an error, like we cannot connect to the WebSocket. Why? Because I am selecting here the row. So you need to use as well socket.io because I am using the socket.io library. So for that, it has some special protocol for it, and Postman is communicating using that protocol. So for that, I will try again to connect. As you see here, we are connected. We got connected to localhost 3000. And then in the console, we have here something like connected and disconnected. So if I am stopping the connection, as you see here, it will say, okay, in the console, it's disconnected. I added also here something which is called socket.emit, and then I will give a key and then a message. So I am going to explain what this means. First of all, when you want to send from the server, like here we have server, and Postman is a client connecting to that server. So on connection, I am going to send message to the client under a key called crypto, for example. You can give any key, so the client has to put this key as well, and then you can send the message which you want. Message, for example, hello world or hello crypto. So for that, I am going to restart the server, and then I am going to connect again using Postman. So I'm having here a connection. Okay, now I need to send a message. So for that, you need to go to something called events, and those are events we are going to connect to them. So we need to listen to the like some event, special event. So socket.io is creating for us like some events where we need to connect or when we want to send messages. I just want to zoom out this a little bit. Okay, now we need to disconnect first. Okay, you can then create event. It's enabled now, this field. Otherwise, when you are connected, you cannot, create events. So here I am going to use the key which I put for in the server. So for that, I will connect, but we didn't receive anything here because in the event, you must say listen on connect, like directly. When we connect, it must listen to this event. So for that, you have to disconnect, click on listen on connect, and then okay, I got exactly message hello world, message hello world, as you see here. Of course, you can send messages to the server. So let's try that again, and we will see how we can send messages to the server. For that, you need to listen to the messages. So you have to say here, for example, socket.on, and then you can have here message. And then this message will have a callback as well. And then you can use this callback to get, for example, the data. And this will have a console log. It will be consoled here. So I will have the data printed here. So we need to restart the server for that, save, and then we restart npm run start again. And of course, when you stop the server, you are disconnected. So you need to click connect again. Okay, hello. So we can say here again, hello from client. So now I will click on send. And as you see, I sent a message. It's called hello from client, and it's going out from the server and then or from the client, and then the server received that message. So as you see here, I got hello from client because I am listening to the message and I am getting the data. Of course, we are not going to send anything to the client in this application because we are going to create requests and send the data to the client. We are not going to send anything from the client to the server. So for that, we are going to use a library to read the live crypto data, as we will see now. So for that, I am going to use a request. As I told you, we installed a library which is called HTTPS. So we have here HTTPS constant, and we will require that library as well, which we installed before. So we need to use that library. But for that, we need to send, for example, every 5 seconds some data to the client. So how we can do that? First of all, let's have a look to the library which we are going to use to get the data of the crypto. So the library which I am going to use, it's called Messari.io. It's a website where it's giving all prices and news about crypto, and as you see here. So they have something in their website called More, and then you can click on API, and in the API they have direct example here, like you can request some data directly from their API, as you see here. So I am going to have this example, for example, and put it on the browser just like this. And as you see, I got data. For example, I got prices of Bitcoin, I guess, BTC, and also Ethereum, and some data, other data or other cryptos which we need, or the most famous cryptos. So the idea of our application is to get this data and create requests every 5 seconds to update them in our application. So the client is expecting always to get messages like those messages as you see here, but with the data which has or hold the crypto prices. So let's do that. First of all, we need to create a request from like the server to that API which we saw before. So first of all, I need to create that request. First, I will define constant, I will call it request, and this request will hold the same library name which I have created by creating this constant, and then I will say here request, and this request function, it has like 2 parameters. One of them is called options, so you need to pass the option like the URL like of the API, and also the method which you want to use like get or post. So we need to use get. So first of all, you need to define a constant which is called options, like to make your code still beautiful. So here I will have constant and I will call it options, and these options will be an object. It will have first host name, like we can say here host name, exactly how we have it in the documentation of this library HTTPS. And in the host name, we are going to put the URL which we had here. So if you remember, I copied that URL. So we need to have first that domain. So here the host name will be that domain. And then we will have a port. Normally the port should be 443. And then you must define the path or the URI where it will contain the API itself. So you can copy from this slash until the end, everything, and then you put them inside this path. And then you don't need this HTTPS totally. So now we have the host name, the port, and the path. And the last thing you need to specify is the method. So the method which we are going to have for this request is called get. So we need to get data. So now we have the options, and this options or this request is going to have for us the response in a callback, and this response will hold the data for me. So I am going to handle that response and then send them to the client through the WebSocket. So also when we are going to get data, there are some events which we need to know. So first of all, we need to have response.on and then on data. These are the response or the event which is responsible for getting the data. and here it's going to define or get for me the data which I am going to pass. But first of all, let's convert them to a string, because those data are coming for me like some specific object, or how to say, like they are encrypted because we are using the HTTPS protocol. So for that, I will define this as a chunk, and then I will say return for me instead of that a string which will hold for me that chunk. So I will define first of all here a string, so we can call it let str, and this str will be an empty string, and then in the response I will say here str will be like, or we can say plus equal, like it will get the old data and the new data, and then we will have the chunk. So at the end we will get multiple data. One of them is the data which I want inside that string. So after that, we have to say in the response, again, there is event called end. So after the request ended, then we need to do something. We need to send those data to the client. But as I told you, we need to send them as a string. So you need to, how to say, send them directly as a string. So you don't have to pass anything, for example, here, just you need to get the event. So I want to have the event end, and then like after the data is gotten, then I can send to the client through the WebSocket. If you remember, we defined a variable here which is called, or a constant is IO, which hold for me the socket. So I can do on and some event like send messages or emit even a message. So as well, I am going here to have like IO.emit, and then with this emit I will define the key or the event key, which is called crypto as we defined before, as I explained, and we will pass this str or this string which hold that data or those data. And at the end of this request you must call something which is called end. So we need to finish that request totally. Let's save that and try our application again. So I am going to here Ctrl+C, npm run start, and then I am going to connect again to my client. So for that I will click on connect. Okay, I am connected, but I didn't receive the data because the request already done when I was, or when I sent those data, or when I started this application. So here, as you see, it will execute everything, and then okay, after that the client come late and got connected, but he lost the data, or he didn't get those chunk of data. To be sure that you are really getting those data, you can make a console log in the server. So we can have here console.log, and then we call this str, just to be sure that we are really getting data through this HTTPS request. So let's close the server, run it again. As you see here, I got the same data which are called in the client, as you see here, or which we called through the browser. Of course, you can use the Postman for creating like a GET request. You just need to post that URL which you found in this like library, or this API. So we can just click on send, and then we are going to have a request, and this request will hold the data as you see. So you can see them in a beautiful way as you see here. Of course, we are going to map those data again to fit and to get what really just want from the API. So now we are going to create or send to the WebSocket this data every 5 seconds. So for that, I'm going to surround all of this with something called set interval, and this set interval, it's going to execute this code every 5 seconds. So let's remove this const request, we don't need it anymore, and I am going to create here the set interval. Set interval is a method from JavaScript. You can use it for executing multiple lines of code many times every specific time, or every some seconds. So for example, the callback will hold for me the code which I am going to execute, and the second parameter of that function will hold for me the duration in milliseconds. So I want to get the data every 5 seconds. So 5000 milliseconds is 5 seconds. So now we copy that code or cut it and put it inside the call of this set interval. And now we save, and then we go to our server, restart it again, and then we are going to connect through the client. So going back to the tab where I have my WebSocket and click on connect. Okay, let's wait. So I should get message every 5 seconds. So I got first one, as you see here. So it's hold all the data. Second one, a new prices comes. Third one, etc. And when you click on it, you can see all the data. And all the data are coming as string, as you see here. So now we are able to have live update of the prices of the crypto to our client, as you see here. And this is what we are going to show in the application. But as you see, those data are too much. Let's get like some specific information by mapping through this data, and then we return, for example, only the symbol and also the price. So let's do that. So in the request itself, when we have created the call for the HTTPS, I am getting this string which will hold the data. So for that, I am going to parse it to JSON. So I will define here a constant, call it data, and this data, or we can say prices, and this prices will be JSON.parse. So I am going to parse those data because they are coming as a JSON, and I will pass the string which is going to be changed to JSON. And then I will get .data. Why? Because I have here two members. One is status and one is data. So I'm going to loop or map over this data. So for that, we go here, data, and say .map. So I'm going to change this data structure which I got from the API to another shape. So I will say here item, and this item or this map is going to return for me callback, and this callback will map over every item. So it's going to loop over data. So it will going to have this first one, second one, third one, etc. So for that, as you see here, I need, for example, only the ID, and I also can get the name. So I can get only the symbol and also a price. So let's create this map. So I'm going to have here a return, and in this return, I will have object. It has ID, which is having item.id, because every item has ID, as you see here. And then I will have another item which will be called name, the name of the crypto. So it will have item.symbol. Why I selected symbol? Because I have here in the API or in the call, as you see, I have symbol. I don't have name. And finally, we are going to get the data or the price itself. So it's inside metrics, market data, price data, and then I get that price. Okay, let's go here and say the price. So we can give a field called price. And this price will hold for me item.metrics, as you see, or as we get it from the API, .market data. And this market data exactly specified, and then price underscore USD in dollar. So it's here exactly metrics, market data, and price USD. So let's save and restart that server. But what I have to send? I have to send prices. I don't have to send the str. So we put here prices. And of course, it will be sent as a JSON after we mapped over it, as you see here, and return a new shape, not the shape which is specified by the API. So let's stop the server, restart it again, and go again to our, like here, the WebSocket. And of course, let's clean the messages to have a new messages, and then click on connect. Okay, we got first message. Nice, we have here the data. First data is Bitcoin has this price, Ethereum has this price, etc. So as you see, we are getting the specified data every 5 seconds in a new message. And the price, as you see, it's changing every time. So you have update or live update of the prices. Now the Bitcoin has 64, and now it has 64.9930. So we will see in the front end part how we are going to connect to this WebSocket and then get the data instead of getting them to Postman. Okay, now we are going to implement the application, the prices, the live prices in React Native application. So I opened a new window of like the Visual Studio Code, and I have my simulator which I have created after installing the Xcode. If you don't know how to initialize the React Native environment, you can check other videos which I have created on this channel. You can also see how you can set up your environment to start developing with React Native. So first of all, we are going to open a folder, and this folder like normally is located near the server project which we created before. So I went to the folder where I have created the project. I have the server as we saw before, and I'm going to create a new folder, call it a client, for example. Or you don't have to create a folder, because if you execute the project here, it's going to be like how to say, to create the project React Native in a new folder. But for organizing, let's create a folder, give it a name client, and open it here. And let's open the terminal by pressing Ctrl J, and then with this Ctrl J we have a terminal here. So with this terminal we can execute the commands which will create for me a React Native application project. So first of all, I am going to create an application. How we can do that? First, you need to install the latest version of NodeJs, and you are sure that you can run commands such as mpx, so you can create applications. So you can have here a command which is called mpx react native, and then init, and then you give a name for your application. So for example, I will call it crypto prices app, something like that. Or you don't have to give this suffix app, you can just say crypto prices. So now we are pressing enter, and it's going to install all the required libraries which we need for the application. I'm going to fast this video because it takes a while. So now we are ready, and we installed all the application. As you see here, we have the whole folder structure. So for that, it's better to open the Visual Studio Code inside that folder. Do not let it like this. So we are inside the client, and inside client it created a folder, and inside this folder let's have the Visual Studio Code open. So for that, I will go again to the file and click on open folder, and then I will go inside the client, and then I will click on crypto prices and open the project here. Okay, everything is nice now, and we are ready, and we have all the files on the root. So we open the terminal again, and let's run the project. So for that, we are sure that we are running the simulator. For here I have iPhone, and also you can run Android as I explained in the other video. And you will see here on the top corner the link to that video where I explained all the steps of installing the React Native environment. So I am going now to run the project. So again we say mpx, and then we say React Native again, and then we say run iOS or run Android. So here in my case I have iOS because I have iOS simulator. So we press enter, and then we have to wait again until the project gets built. It takes as well a while, so I am going to skip this step until the application building is ready. So as you see now, our project is running, and we have welcome to React Native, and everything is fine. So I am going to hide the terminal. So we have here the terminal, let's hide it and open our project. The entry point of React Native project is app.js. So as you see, everything which we see here in this application is placed here in this code. So for example, we can replace it with our design which we are going to make for the crypto. In React Native.dev website, they have something called components. So we can use a component which are already defined and installed with React Native. One of them is called a flat list. As you see here in this flat list, I can as well do like those items and render the items based on what I want. So as we saw in the intro that we are going to have for every item here, like the price of specific coin. Like here we will have Bitcoin, here we'll have Ethereum, here we will have Solana, etc. So I am going as entry for me, I'm going to copy all of this file. So let's have that. I am going to Control all everything, this example of flat list item, and go to our application and then paste everything which is in app.js and then save and go to our application, and we will see that we have the same example running on our device or in our simulator. So we are going to start from here. So as you see here, the data are hard-coded. So we have here this data and they are hard-coded in the application. Our job is going to bring those data from the WebSocket or through the WebSocket and replace this hard-coded data to pass them to this flat list item, which is displaying those items in the application. As you see here, it has some property which is called data, and you can pass those data exactly from the API or from WebSocket. So for that, let's do this. Or we can as well do some styling first. Let's start with the easy step. First of all, let's do the styling for those items, assuming that we have data like we have here BTC, like Bitcoin, and we have, for example, the price and etc. So I'm going to have here a name. So for the data, we will have ID, we will have name, and we will have as well something called price. So we can as well we have the price, exactly how we implemented it in the backend or in the API or in the WebSocket, how we were getting the data through Postman. So we have here as well like some price, let's say 60 or 50,000, and here it will have another price, like we can say 40,000. We have here ETH, Ethereum, and we will have here another coin, like we can say here Dogecoin, for example. And now I am going to put the prices different just to have the simulation of those prices, so we can see all the variants. So we can have here 0.66. So as you see here, we don't have any data because we changed the title to name. So for that, we expect that this flat list is going to render an item, and this render item is a function which will return the item with title, and this title or this item will be a component, this one here, which will render the title or it has a property which is called title, and it will be rendered to a text and it has a title. So let's change everything to name. So here the item component will be a name, and here as well it will be a name, and then we will have as a props, because here now we are calling the component which is called item, and we have here item as well. Of course you can name it whatever you want because this is a component, you can define whatever you want. So here we have a name, and we have here the instead of here styles, we need to change them later. We put here name as well, and we keep this as a title because here we have the styles as item and title. Let's change it now to name, so to be easier and more understandable and we don't have a confusing stuff. So as you see here, we have BTC, Ethereum, and the Dogecoin, but we don't have the prices here. So we can add as well another item or another text item which says that I'm going to display the price, and the style of it will be price, and I am going to expect another property for this item component which is called price. So for that we can define here as well another prop which is going to be called price. So I have here price, and then it will be item dot price as well. So let's save that, and as you see I got the prices as well because I have the item or data are passed here through this array, and I have field which is called price. So now let's do some styling. I'm going to have the styles file as you see here, or the styles object, and it has a container, and this container is flex, and let's style the item first. First of all, this background is ugly. Let's make it like more nice color. I will put like this color as you see here, and let's give like a border as well. We can have a border for every item. So under those, margin horizontal, margin vertical, everything is fine. So we can have here border radius, for example, we can give it 5 value, like 5 pixel, and we can have as well a border width. So this border will have like some specific width which will be thin a little bit, or we can make it as a 2, and we can give a color for this border. So we can have as well like the color border color here, as you see, and we give it like a color which is really like simpler, or like a little bit darker. So as you see, we can have this color. Of course, it's up to you. You can style your application as you want. So now let's have alignment for this item. So I am going to have the name on the left and the price here on the right. So we can do that as well by giving a flex. Like this, we say that this inbox or this item is a flex. And first or second step, we are going to put them near each other. So I will have here flex direction. It will be as like a row, like so they will be near each other, as you see here. And then we need to align the items. So we can align them to be in the center. So we can have here a center, and justify the content to be vertically or horizontally centered as well. So we can have as well justify content to be centered. But now they are okay, centered, but they are stuck to each other. So for that, I can say, give me like justify the content to be like a space between. So you can change that one to be not center, but it can be a space between, as you see here. So now we have the prices away from the name. So let's give also for the price a property which will be like font size, something bigger, so we can have as well a bigger prices. So as you see now, our application is almost ready. We have all the data, but they are hard-coded. We need to bring those data exactly from the WebSocket which we have created before. So for that, you have to make sure that you are running the backend as I told you before. So here I have running backend to make sure that we are really going to get a data from the WebSocket. So just to make sure that you are doing that. Okay, now we are going to have like the WebSocket. Of course, we used in the backend a library which is called socket.io. As well, we need to install it in the front end. But here we need to install a specific library which is called socket.io client. So I will go here to the terminal. Let's make clear, and then we have npm install, and we need to install socket.io-client. This is the library which we need. In the back end, we were installing only socket.io. So let's install this library, and we can import it then to our application and use it to connect to our backend. So here the data is ready. So the installation of the library is ready. So we don't need the terminal anymore. So first of all, we need to import the socket.io. So we have here import, and in the import we say io from. And with this library which we have installed, it will have the same name of the library. So we can have socket.io client. So for that, now we are going to connect to the backend exactly how we did with Postman. So I will do here const socket. I will define a constant which is called socket, and I will use this item or which I have imported is called io, and then we pass the URL of the WebSocket. So here I will have HTTP, and then you can have like localhost and etc. It's better with iOS to use 127.0.0.1, and then you put the port of the backend which we have initialized, which is 3000. On the Android devices, you need to put the IP of the device. So you need to go to the terminal and check for your IP, the current IP on the network, and then you have to put that IP here. With Android, I am talking about Android, but with iOS, you use this IP. So for that, you have to make sure to know what is your IP in the network, and you put it here so the Android device can connect to the WebSocket. So to make sure that you are really connected to the API or to the WebSocket, you can use like an event which is defined by socket. So we can have here socket.on, exactly how we did with the backend. So we can call this event, or it's called connect, and it has a callback. So this callback, you can do whatever you want on the connection initialization. So you can say console.log, and then you can say socket and connected like this. So we have the socket connected directly to our application. So to check the console log of React Native application, if you remember, when you run the application, it's running with it something called Metro. So with this Metro, you can check the console log of your application. So let's zoom it a little bit. So now I will try to refresh the application. So we go here, you can press R, so you can run the application, and also you have to save here your application. So as you see, I am not connected to the socket because I stopped the backend. Let's run the backend again. So I will go to my backend application, put npm run start. Okay, listening to 3000. The application or the backend application is running, and we have here socket connected. As you see here, I'm doing a refresh and the socket is connected. Nice. So I will be able now to get data from the socket and replace this hard-coded data with the data which are coming from the backend. So for that, in React Native, we are going to use inside the component, which is have here app, we are going to use state and also the effects. The state, so they can keep tracking and updating those like how to say the data after every 5 seconds, as we set in the backend, or after every message which is coming from the backend. So now I will define here like under the render item, or before, we can say here like 2 items or array, and this array will have a data, and this data will have also set data. So we can define a use state. So use state is a function, or like how to say a component which is used in React Native. You can import it as well to your application. So we can have here use state from React, as you see here. And with this use state, we define 2 variables. One is set or data, where it holds the data, and set data, where it's going to update this variable which is called data. So I'm going to explain it more with the code. So for that, to update the data, it's very important to use something called effect. So with that effect, then you are able to update your data. So this effect has a callback, and also it has another parameter after the callback, which will be an empty array. It's very important to define an empty array here to not have infinite loop of updates. So you can just get or listen to the updates which are coming from the socket. So inside this use effect callback function, we can say socket dot, and then we can say on. And inside this on, you can define the event which you have defined in the backend. If you remember, we defined like a key which is used to communicate between front end and the back end using this one. We said crypto. So this is an event, and I am pushing prices to this event. So we need our application to listen to that event as well. We call it crypto, exactly how we define it in the backend. And this event then will have a callback which will hold the data which we were returning from the backend. If you remember that it contained an array of prices with every field which is called ID, name, and price, if you remember. So for that, I am going to say that set the data for me which are coming from the backend with this data. So I will have here a callback data. It's better as well to use different names, so we can say here crypto data, for example, so to not conflict with this one. So after that, we have set data, crypto data, and then you don't need this hard-coded array, so you can remove it totally. and say for your data here, like what you are going to pass to the flat list, you need to pass the data itself, which we are setting every time on crypto message. So I'm going to replace data here with the data which I got from the crypto, and I am setting it to this data. So now let's save and see what is going to happen. As you see, I got the real data, exactly how we wanted from the back end with all like coins. Sorry, I closed the app. So as you see here, we are getting the data. Let's see if they are getting updated. Yes, as you see, it's getting updated every 5 seconds, exactly how we have from the WebSocket. So for now, let's do some styling, because here the number is very big. So we need somehow to set the price and change the price format to be like smaller, with smaller dots, or the smaller floating number. So we can have here as well, from the JavaScript, we can use for rendering the item here. We can pass here item, render item, and we can have here, instead of like price to be exactly the same price which is coming from the back end, we can use like a library which is called math, or a class which is called math and defined already in JavaScript, and we use round, and with this round we can pass the item.price and then multiply it with like we can say 100, and then we can divide it to 100. In that way, it's a tricky just to make sure that the number, we have like two floating numbers. So after that, we get this result. So I saved and I got this result. So we have two floating numbers, as you see here, and I have the prices. So as you see, the prices are getting updated every 5 seconds, which is very great, because the WebSocket is connected now to my application and it's injecting messages, as we saw with Postman, every 5 seconds. You can speed up the process by reducing that seconds to less seconds, as we did in the backend. Of course, as well, you can navigate to this Massari API, so you can have more data like such as a BTC, so you can have a charts, you can have all items which you want for your application. For that, I gave you the first step to dive more in React Native with WebSockets and real-time data. I hope you enjoyed the video. Don't forget to subscribe to get more and more great applications like this in the future.